So I rarely have guests come on for a round two, but there was no way I could not invite Selene Yeager on again for a third time to talk about how to decipher some of the messages we hear about menopause and hormones from the podcasts we listen to and the books we read, some reels on Instagram, and all that noise that's accumulating out there so that we can figure out what applies to us and what doesn't. And Selene is leading the way for so many of us women who are older and active. And she's the host of one of my absolutely favorite podcasts, Hit Play, Not Pause, which hopefully all of you are following by now. And if not, it'll be in the show notes. And she's also the content manager of at Feisty Menopause and a best-selling professional health and fitness writer, including co-authoring Roar and Next Level with Dr. Stacy Sims. So go and read those two. And I'll have links to all of these really important resources in our past podcast episodes that we recorded together in the show notes. Now, Selene, she really lives what she writes. She's a certified personal trainer with the National Academy of Sports Medicine. She's precision nutrition certified in nutrition, and she's a certified menopause coach, off-road racer, and former All-American Ironman triathlete. So she's athletic, she's smart, she's in menopause, and she's totally badass. So now, without further ado, let's meet Selene Yeager. Welcome.
Thank you for that. I'm always humbled by those introductions. Thank you.
So listen, I'm really glad you accepted to jump into this like emergency podcast with me to cover a really important topic. And I was so anxious to talk to everyone about this and bring it to them that I broke my one interview a week rule to get this in because it was so important. And so like everyone who's listening now and like me, you hear a lot of conflicting information from the guests that you interview on your podcasts. And you also do a lot of research that you dive into for the amazing blog articles that you write. And you go to social media and your community that you have. And we hear things like, hey, everyone should be on hormones, or no, hormones are dangerous. And it really is so confusing. So I want to share with our listeners a few insights and some tools and tips that she can use to navigate through all this noise and just try to figure out what's best for her. So I don't know, do you agree that this is totally a problem and an issue with peri and postmenopausal women?
Yeah, I think about it literally almost every waking moment. I mean, some days I feel like I do. And I honestly, I actually really find it very distressing if I'm truly honest, because women are up against so much right now. Though hormone therapy has certainly become much more accessible and the word is getting out that it is broadly largely safe, plenty of women with a lot of symptomology still go to their healthcare providers and are told no. Like I hear that every single day. Like, you're too young, it's too dangerous, like all this stuff that I'm like, we spend so much time talking about it. I'm like, how have they not heard this message? That the W, like,
I know it's
how
true.
is this still happening? So that's a legit true problem. But on the other hand, there's this like strong, steady, growing drumbeat that you are doing yourself a giant disservice. I mean, I've heard doctors say, your body, your choice, but if you're not on hormones, like I've heard that said, that that if you don't take them, you'll get dementia, you'll get heart disease, your bones will turn to dust. I mean, this is like the undercurrent, if not the overt message that some women are getting. And I hear from women who are either 60 plus, and never had hormones, and they're devastated because they're getting this message and they're like, wow, it's too late and now everything's going to be terrible until the end of time. I hear from women who have had breast cancer, who have clotting issues, or some contraindications, and they're all confused and scared. And I hear from women who don't feel symptomatic and don't necessarily want to start another thing in their life, but now they spend a lot of time worrying that they're making a grave error. And it's really a pickle. And honestly, sort of the thing that is really hard for me is like, I'll go to the Menopause Society meeting. I go every year and I sit there and it's long. It's like 8 a.m. to 7 p.m., like walls of information. And, sure, there's a lot of promising research out there showing that it may have these protective effects. But then, like, literally, I sat in a presentation that says, It was on ovarian hormones and cognitive health, the past and the future, and it concluded no evidence of long-term cardiovascular, metabolic, or cognitive benefits of HT, or any evidence to suggest adverse effects
Mm.
among women who have good cardiovascular health. It is still not approved for the primary or secondary prevention of heart disease. Then I follow Lisa Mosconi, she does all that cutting edge brain research, and she's a book coming out. She's been teasing some stuff, and she just released it was like a multi-level meta-analysis, 6 million women worldwide, a giant study, and even with all of that, she found timing matters. These are her words, not mine. Hormone therapy is most beneficial when started in midlife in response to menopause symptoms. Hormones matter. Estrogen only therapy shows promising protective effects, while mixed results were seen with estrogen progestogen therapy. Takeaway: starting estrogen soon or during or soon after menopause could potentially cut down on the risk of Alzheimer's and dementia among eligible women. While these findings don't directly translate to clinical advice, they shout for more research. Those are her words. Like,
Yeah.
so that's like, okay, it's promising, it looks nice, but it's not like you're going to. And then I read some of the cardiovascular, papers, and it's the same thing. It's like, sure, it's trending in a way that looks pretty good, but there's nothing that's saying like, my God, everybody needs to be on it, or you're going to be sick. And I always think like women also need to keep in mind, like if I had a crystal ball. So I sit there, and there's also very good evidence emerging that if you are highly symptomatic, especially vasomotor symptoms, right? Hot flashes and night sweats, that those are being connected to higher risk for cardiovascular disease. White matter hypertensities in the brain, which are a marker of dementia and cognitive decline. So it makes sense that for women who are symptomatic, I mean, I think that dot will be connected, right? That for
Mm.
women who are highly symptomatic, starting hormone therapy in that time could help prevent these things that they're at an increased risk for. That kind of like really makes a lot of sense in my mind. And when you put all the research together, you still have to look like a lot of women have uteruses. So all this estrogen, I'm like, okay, but you throw the progestogen in there, and that we know that that's like that changes things. And yes, micronized progesterone, but there's a lot that studies have to sort out. And everyone's banging the estrogen matters drum. And I had them on the show. They're lovely. They've done very important work. Carol Tavris never took hormone therapy. She's the
Yeah.
co-author of the book.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I'm just like, anyway, that was a very long way of saying I agree with you. I'm sorry.
It's absolutely necessary. You said that and all of that. And I so agree with you. And it is, that's why it's so confusing, because we do hear you hear, or you dive into it yourself, and the conclusion that we get, and I hear the same thing, and I'm still stuck at the same point, is like you said, is okay, looks promising, uh but more research needs to be done. Like, doesn't every study like end with that? Was so frustrating. And and
But it's going to
it's,
be that way for a long time. Let's be clear.
yeah,
We are not going to have definitive answers. Maybe ever. Maybe ever, because that's not how medical science works, and there's too many variables. Like,
yeah,
we might have a very clear picture and a clearer picture for women, but when you consider all the ways you can use estrogen, all the dosages, all the receptors that are unique to women, add the progestogen or the progesterone, add patches, add creams, add IUDs, there's like a lot, add your personal risk, or there's just so much to sort through. I mean, it's no wonder that there's so much conflicting information.
yeah, exactly. And when people read a study or look at some article, they don't really teasing out what all those variables are. Most women don't understand that there's progestogens and there's progesterone, and there's,
Right. Right.
different types and dosages and different mixtures and formulas and
Yeah.
delivery methods, especially when you're just starting out in this. It's huge, and it's already confusing to do that, but then when you try to go and make a conclusion, you don't really know those little other confounding factors. And that's why, when I recommend people to see their doctor, please go see someone who's really trained in this and understands how to do it. And I mentioned to you earlier, I'm doing the menopause method training with the Institute of Bioidentical Medicine, and they are. After going through this, I'm halfway through. I go, no wonder doctors don't want to do this, because it's so time consuming and it's expensive, and it's kind of complicated. It's not like you just, at least the way I'm learning it, you don't just throw one formula out at every single
Right.
woman and just, hope for the best. And it's not that way if you want to do this correctly. And I'm afraid that either doctors, don't do it, and I can understand why, but then there's doctors who just, throw this
Or
stuff at
just keep
women.
upping the dose, or just
Yeah.
keep jacking it up, like, in like, "Oh, not
Yeah.
feeling anything? We'll turn it up." Like, maybe, maybe not. I'm not sure that's the answer, but yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, and to your point, I hear a lot from women who, it and it is important that I think that we reiterate what you just said, is that it's not a set it and forget it situation where you necessarily get, like, this prescription and it works for everybody, because it doesn't, and it can take months, it can take 6 months, 8 months to dial it in, and it can change over time,
Yes.
and I hear
Yeah.
that a lot, and I don't think necessarily women are prepared for that either.
Exactly. Right. When you think that you found the perfect cocktail, well, your skin gets thinner, it's different. You're not absorbing it in your arms anymore.
Your
And you got to,
receptors might be changing.
yeah, so much. And so, yeah, you
Mhm.
think, oh, it's not working anymore. But again, that's, yeah, to be, it's kind of like the diet. You found the perfect diet for yourself and you go years and years or decades, and then suddenly it doesn't work. Well, yeah, that's the human body, and you have to be prepared for that.
Yeah,
And I do think that women need to really dial into themselves, if they're going to do some hormone therapy, because the doctor's there to try to help you, and
right.
but you are the one who has to also help the doctor help you by understanding how are you feeling, and could it be related to the estrogen or progesterone or testosterone or whatever it is that they're giving them, and then communicate this to your doctor. And and then the doctor hopefully will be testing you in some way or another, or analyzing, taking in the feedback that you give them, looking at some blood work, looking at some urine work, maybe asking you more questions. And it's a total tango, and it takes a lot of time. And I'm just kind of figuring out the way that the institute has been teaching these. This is a program for doctors. They say, well, you got to tell the client that, or the patient, that she needs to come in probably 3 times in a row with about a month or so spaced out. And if you're paying for a functional medicine doctor, that's hundreds of dollars each
Yeah.
time. And yeah, I don't know how doctors are going to navigate this, or the patients themselves, because that can cost a pretty penny. And then, supposedly you get your formula, and then I come back a year later. But then what if you need to do that dance again?
Well, and I'll also throw out this, and not that this is about this, but when you're talking about confusion, I mean, I sat at the Menopause Society meeting, and there was a sort of AMA little section, when they were talking about hormone therapy, and somebody asked about the Dutch test, and literally the panel said no comment. Like,
Mm,
nobody even talked about it, because they're just like, you don't need that. That is useless. So, I mean, that's the
yeah.
message coming out of that society. And
Yeah.
then you have this whole, and I sit there and I'm like, seriously? I mean, that's your answer?
Yeah.
You're not even
Yeah.
gonna
Comment.
really? You're
Yeah,
just
you should at least comment and have a debate and have a discussion
yeah,
about
like,
it.
they're
That
all wrong. They're all just ignoramuses. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Like, is that
Yeah.
true?
Yeah.
So it's but so it doesn't surprise me, and I know we'll talk about this a little later, how things become tribal,
Yeah.
you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Actually, we can talk about that now, because some of the people who've been listening, hopefully they've been watching these reels that I've been making, these 1 minute reels of menopause around the world, where I ask women of different cultures and socioeconomic levels and backgrounds about their menopause experience. And they're really popular. But the comments, uh, the bickering, the confusion, it's really disheartening. And what really makes me sad is that women seem to literally drive their stick into one camp or the other. Like, they can be really judgmental based on very little information that they get in a 1 minute video. So, and I know yeah, it's like, yeah, they made this whole decision based on their own experience. And I know you're seeing the same in your social media communities. And I don't know what message you really want to share with women who is either watching or commenting like that.
For one, I want to say I love those reels that you've been doing. I do really enjoy them.
Oh,
Um,
thanks.
and it just, like I asked you before you hit record, I'm like, so you just walk up to people on the street and just like, tell me, tell
Yes.
me what's your age and how is menopause for you? It's just like,
I get a lot of rejection, but there are women who are happy to talk about it.
yeah, and they see and it's clear. I mean, they're delightful. They are. And the one you just did recently that I really liked was that woman in her, I think she was 80.
Yep.
And it's sort of like what we were saying, like about the hormone therapy discussion. She's done beautifully. She's had some
Yeah.
rough times, she got through it. She's thriving. It's lovely to see. And of course, there are women who are floored by the whole thing. And and that's real too. And I think it's important, like, we do not need to be threatened by each other's experiences. We can learn from them, or even just observe them without absorbing them. And I
Mhm.
think that is really, I wish more people could do that, especially even in my own group. Like, you see, like, if you don't agree with something or it doesn't register with you, it's okay to shrug and keep scrolling without reacting. I think that's better for your own mental health. I'm not, it's,
Yeah.
and it's just grounded in what we all started with. Like, women have been overlooked, undertreated. They started a baseline of sort of like being agitated about that. Now they're in this big life transition, which is also can be quite agitating. So they're in this position of offense and defense kind of at the same time, and then they can get attached to something that they found, and maybe they did find it on the internet or whatever, and they believe they have found the answer and it works for them. And if someone comes up and puts on their own answers that is counter to that, it feels challenging. And I kind of get that. So I try to keep things, in my group, I'm like, as non-negative as possible. I don't want like false positivity, but I'm just like, it is okay that everyone has their own way up this mountain. Like, even the own advice that I give, and have given with Stacy, it is not the gospel of everything. It works for a lot of women. We present the research we can, but there's nothing, there is nothing that is singular to every single person. So
Yeah.
just like, take in for your own mental health, like, don't get so attached to everything, to your own position. And if you are super attached to it, that's fine too. Just let other people be attached to theirs. I think
Yeah.
that's all okay.
That's really good advice. I really like that. And it reminds me of sometimes people comment. The first time I saw it, I liked it because it was, I can't remember, the reel was somebody who had a positive experience, because I share people positive, negative, whatever they say. And she said, "Oh, I'm happy for her. I'm didn't quite have the same experience. I'm struggling with this and that." And I think that's a really healthy approach too. If
Yep.
you go, okay, without really, I have had people say that person's lying. That's not possible. This is BS. She
I've heard
forgot.
that too.
Yeah.
I'm just like, I'm like, no, I think that's actually her experience. That's okay.
Yeah, yeah, and that's okay. That's what I think, that
Yeah.
if we can just say that's okay, and vice versa. If I share somebody who's had a really horrible experience, you get women who say, "Oh, well, it's because she's not eating right, and she doesn't exercise, and she doesn't take care of herself, and of course, and she'll, it's really sad." So if you see something that's resonate that, then fine. You say, "Well, I'm really sorry for her, but I think we have some solutions. This is what worked for me," and that's okay too. If you can't just
Yeah.
keep scrolling.
Right. Right.
Right.
Right.
So that's a really healthy approach. And I do want women, I want them to be united, not divided in this time. And I do think like you said, it is a transition. And so it's hard, and we can get emotional and attached to something based on just because our hormones are going a little bit crazy.
There's that
And
too.
yeah, and we can also step back before we hit comment, maybe stop for a moment and go take a break, make a tea, and then come back. And if you really still feel like making a comment, then try to do it that way.
Right. Also good advice.
Yeah, yeah. No, I really want women to be united. So tell me, what else are you seeing in your community in terms of other topics of confusion? Is there, because we always, the topic of HRT is so hot, but are there any other topics that women are being a little confused on?
Oh, 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 Ozempic and
Oh,
Wegovy.
yes.
Oh boy, the weight loss drugs. If there's another topic that you want to wade into that gets people heated in a hurry, like
Yeah.
boy, when that comes up, the knives come out on all sides. Whew, I'm working on a whole show on that because it's being, I don't know if you've seen it, but like the New York Times just did a piece like, is this the new answer to menopausal weight gain? I mean, now it's
Oh, I
being
didn't see that one.
very directly directed at our demographic, and I
Oh, wow.
I find that worrisome.
Yeah.
And it's yeah, and that is if there's anything, that is actually probably the hottest button. I mean, people argue about the testing and the hormones a bit, but ooh, that comes into the chat and things get, I have to turn off commenting almost every time at some point. It just gets too heated.
Oh, wow. Yeah. No, that's, are there, is it because some people have taken it and they have good results, others who just think it's the worst thing in the world? I mean, what is it? I
Yeah, I
haven't
mean,
seen
it's
it.
it's
I'm
a
in your community and I haven't quite fallen on one of those yet.
yeah, it's a confluence of things. You have women who will say it's not for you because you only have a few pounds to lose, right? Like these drugs, because there are shortages of them and they're very expensive.
Mm,
So, I mean, the woman I'm talking to is actually the doctor I'm talking to for the show I'm doing is very distressed because she can't get it often for the patients who need it most. It is a
mm,
problem.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so that comes up, and then you have women who still will call it sort of like cheating, and that triggers a lot of people,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then you have the arguments like back and forth. Is it good? Is it bad? I mean, and it's all around weight. So weight is so charged anyway. So it just
Yeah.
becomes heated.
Yeah.
Like often they can. And it'll go for a while, but then it almost always somebody will come in and just be an a-hole, quite honestly. They'll just start, like, being mean and I'm just like, "That's the one rule. One rule."
Yeah.
You know? I don't mind heated discussions, I don't mind passionate discussions, but you don't ever need to, like, insult people. That's just you don't need to do it to,
Yeah.
voice your opinion.
I think the
So,
same
yeah.
rule. Yeah. The same rule applies. Hold back, guys. You can just wait a moment. Yeah. And comment with a little bit of, kindness, I guess, and think about that other person on the other side. And we don't know what they're living. We don't know their story. We're not living in their shoes. So it's really, it would be nice to again to be a bit united and just you can question things as well. So Ozempic, yeah, those weight loss peptides, it is, I can totally see because, and it sounds like just like hormone therapy in the sense that maybe there's not enough research or there's not enough that's even
Well,
newer obviously than hormone
long
therapy,
term
but
for people without diabetes, like, those studies are like the earliest I found was 10 years. I mean, that's
yeah.
not a lot of time, and that's not a giant population. We're just talking about studies.
Yeah.
Now we're looking at millions of people.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. So yeah, again, hold your horses, guys. And see, I always think there's it's a really tough thing though if you're trying to decide to take, I don't know, Ozempic because whatever reasons or hormone therapy and you're on this trajectory and you don't know because the research isn't there yet to make really conclusive statements, but yet you have this window of time.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
You get
I
scared,
get it.
you feel like you got to make these decisions, and that's really really hard. So what would you say to somebody who is thinking about taking anything, in terms of either the Ozempic or hormone therapy? How do they make these decisions for themselves?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I won't weigh in quite as much on Ozempic because I that's a rubric I haven't figured out in my mind. I mean, I do 100% feel like there is a time and a place for these drugs that is very important and powerful and meaningful, and that should be done between you and your doctor. Losing, I just read about a woman who died, from the side effects, and she was just trying to lose like 20 pounds to get into her daughter's, like her mother of the bride dress kind of thing for a
Oh,
wedding. And like,
yeah.
that's just crushing. Like, I feel like that makes me sad. So
Yeah,
I
no.
think we always need to remember these things are they're drugs, and
Yeah.
and they can have consequences, and it's just really important to remember that. Anyway, But like, as far as the hormone therapy, because I do think an awful lot about it. I spend a lot of time in my own head, Um, I find myself double or triple guessing myself every day because, I'm like, am I doing myself a disservice? But then I just go back to there's so much you can know about yourself. You can know your cardiovascular risk. You can know your bone density. You can know your fracture risk. You can know how you feel. I mean, like my moods have never been more stable. My blood pressure is great. I have a hot flash now and then, but it's not disruptive. I mean, so you can don't as a woman ever let anybody take away that agency from you of how you actually feel.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a lot of information you can have about everything, about your sleep, about your age, and just look at the picture. Do you have joint pain? Do you have hot flashes? Do you have a lot of things that are disrupting you? I think if your life is being disrupted by the menopause transition symptoms, 100% go talk about, you should not suffer. You shouldn't question in that respect. Work
Mhm.
with your doctor, see if it is right for you. It looks like it's right for almost anybody at some degree, even people who have had breast cancer, they're questioning, like, maybe. So talk to your doctor if your hormones are bad and there's markers of change that are not positive, definitely. But if you're doing well, the boat's steady, your health is good, you're exercising, because a lot of these studies aren't done on people who necessarily have taken care of themselves either.
Yeah.
And that's a really important thing to take in. Like, there's a lot of ways to take care of your heart. There's a lot of ways to take care of your mental health. I had Sarah McKay, on the show, who's also a neuroscientist. She's like, the hormones, sure, they're important, but they're just part of a chorus. And
Yeah.
that chorus includes, your diet and your exercise and your community. And we've talked about community before, which might be the most important thing of all. So they just did when I sat at the Menopause Society meeting too, and they had this amazing presentation on how strength training and high intensity training, triggers the release of irisin, which is that wonderful hormone that crosses the blood barrier and is so good for your brain. It reduces tangles, and in the very next breath, like, one of the researchers said, but that's a lot of work. And I'm like, what?
Oh no.
What?
Oh
What?
my
What did you
God.
just say? Like, that was amazing. You
Yeah.
just talked about this woman who became a power lifter, and her mom became a power lifter, and look at this study. And
Yeah.
you're like, but that's a lot of work. Maybe we can find a pill. So I'm like,
Oh my
there's a lot of
goodness.
there's a lot of stuff you can do, but never, really, never let anybody tell you that you're not feeling what you're feeling, and that,
Yeah.
trust yourself, tune into yourself.
Yeah, whether that's a good feeling or a bad feeling, right? Because you can
Totally.
imagine
Yes.
the woman who feels bad goes to her doctor and says, "You're fine, your blood work is fine," or whatever it is, and dismiss their
Yes.
feelings, right? And how they
Yes.
are in their body.
Find
So
another doctor. Say that all the time. If you are being dismissed, find another doctor. Like, life is too short for that.
yeah.
It's not you, it's them. Find another doctor.
Exactly. I agree 100%. 100%. And there was something else I wanted to comment and I can't it just flew by my head. But oh yeah, I always think about I do talk a lot about because I meet a lot of women who say, well, I didn't go through menopause. I had no symptoms. Everything's fine. Like,
Yeah.
and I tell them, well, actually, you did go through menopause because you
Right.
don't have a period, right? And there are
Right.
things that happen under the hood that you don't
Right.
feel. And I
Right.
still think you should take a look at it in terms
I agree.
of testing your bone density, looking at your
Yes.
cholesterol levels and your
Yes.
thyroid or insulin. Like there's so much other than not just hormones, right?
Yeah, yeah. I agree. Yeah, no, that was what part of that larger picture that I'm talking about, of all the things we can know. And it is like, to be menopause informed is to understand that your lipids can change and things can happen under the hood, as you say so well, that you may not feel. So it is important to do a full check, like, under the hood, over the top, like the whole thing, and get a real picture of it, and then proceed accordingly. There's lots of ways. And if you can't take hormone therapy, and I see those distressed comments in a lot of the influencers commentary when they're like, everybody should be on it. They're like, I can't, and now I feel terrible. Like, there are other things you can do. There's other things you can do for your bones, for your heart, for your brain. Don't ever feel like you're doomed. You're not.
Exactly. And another mantra I always say is you can't out hormone a bad diet and lifestyle.
Mm.
it's even if you're on the hormones, I really encourage women to still take care of all of the things that we know that are good for us: the exercise, the diet, the sleep, the stress management, your community, your friends, your purpose in life, all of this stuff. It matters. It
It matters a
matters.
lot.
Yeah. Again, it's just not taking a pill or a cream and saying, okay, I'm safe. It's not quite that way. So I want to talk about a little bit. I know you always have some really cool event coming up, or maybe you have some news or a book coming out. I don't know. Is there anything that we should be aware of that you're doing or you'd like to share?
Um, let's see, what can I talk about? We just had our performance retreat, and that is always so much fun at Dr. Vonda Wright's. And I
Yes.
think you've,
I'm
yeah,
dying to go one day. It looks so fun.
it's so fun. It's such a good time, and it's so empowering. The last day we have this DECA event, which I know everybody is like really nervous about, and it's non-competitive. We don't time it or anything, but it's a Spartan sort of related thing where you have all these stations on a field. It's an indoor field, and it's just like a sled push and box jumps and all kinds of burpees, all kinds of crazy things. And the women are always like really nervous about that. But it is every time it's the highlight of the weekend because they're just glowing afterwards because they've
Oh,
seen what they can do and like how it feels. It's so cool. So yeah, that's we just came back from that a couple weeks ago, and I always leave pretty charged.
was there
Dr.
another one?
Vonda, we will be planning another one, but it's
Okay.
usually in fall, so it's a
Okay.
while. Um Dr. Vonda, right now, I may or may not be cooking up something together we'll see, in the form
Oh,
of written
cool.
material, right?
Yes, I found Dr.
Yeah.
Vonda on your podcast and invited her to mine. So I'll have links to those because she's just
Yeah,
brilliant. Brilliant.
she's great. She is great. I am putting together a course, which taking years off of my life, but it'll be called Navigate Menopause, and it's like a lot of this discussion, just trying to help people, make
Oh,
sense of what they're
perfect.
seeing and chart their own course.
Oh, I love that. Didn't even know.
Yeah.
So that's perfect. Perfect. And you don't know when that's coming out?
It'll be coming out in February.
Oh, right. Okay, guys. So stay tuned. Follow Selene. So I'm sure you'll be blasting it and
We'll be
sharing it
we'll be
everywhere.
yeah, we'll be hinting and blasting. I'm not speaking out of school. I've already talked about it on my own podcast. So
Awesome. Awesome. Okay. I totally missed that one. So all right. I really do encourage women to follow your podcast, the Hit Not Play Pause podcast. And you also have a Facebook group. And I love your blog articles. I really love them with, wait for them with anticipation.
oh, thank you.
You just have a really good perspective. It's so real. And I absolutely trust the information that you share. And I know you have integrity, and that is so important for me when
It
I'm
takes years off my life, Zora, so I appreciate you saying that. I really do. I mean, I take it. I take people listen, and they listen to you too, and you have to take that seriously. You have to take that seriously.
You do. You do. You don't cut corners. You don't buy in. You don't sell your soul. At least everything I've seen is just done with absolute integrity. And so that's why I
Thank
trust
you.
you. And I know you're doing absolutely your best for us. So, and I'm going to have links to your blog and the podcast and the show
Thanks.
notes. But where else do you recommend women to find more help? Because they get a lot of information from you, but where else? What other resources or programs or things that you would recommend? What that you can trust?
Yeah, it's there's a lot out there, right? And there's a lot of good. I mean, we talk about like iffy, but there's a lot of good information. I mean, I'm surprised at how well resourced even the big medical menopause associations like genev.com has some really nice resources on it. Just articles on pretty much everything that you would be interested in menopause. They have a lot there. Healthywomen.org is a really nice source. MyMenopauseCenter.com is also, I've had Claire Spencer on the show, and she's really great. So I think anytime that someone is not hard selling you something too, you have to, it's hard sometimes when you go on the internet and something looks like a great source, but then they have like 12 million supplements that they're really trying to sell you.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
not to say that like the information's bad, but you always have to just look at it a little more carefully. But yeah, those are
Mhm.
those are some places that I like.
Oh, fantastic. I'm going to have those in the show notes too, because I think we need as many resources as we can, but also the ones that we can trust. And I think that's a really good point is are they really trying to, push you a lot of stuff? I mean, of course, everybody needs to make some money and make a living, but
Totally. Yeah.
But if it's just that's the solution for everything,
If
then
everything funnels back to a supplement, you have to be a little,
yeah,
like if the end
it's
of every article is take all this, then you're like,
yeah.
okay,
And I'm
maybe.
I'm I'm a supplement queen. I mean, I love supplements.
Oh,
I'm
I take them
a
too. I did. Yeah. I,
but yeah. So it's again more confusion. I think a lot of women are confused on that too. Is just, yeah, do I take the supplement, not the supplement? Is it good and is it bad? And yet again, I you see it working for some people and not for others. And
yep.
oh, it's
Well,
a
it's
whole other
funny
world.
because my brother is a FBI chemist. He is an explosive chemist and very, very high up there, but he hates medical science because we're not test tubes. Like,
Yeah.
in his world, when you add this and you add this, it does this, and I'm like, we're not, we are not test tubes. Like, it just doesn't work that way.
It's so true. And I'd say the
Yeah.
whole biohacking mantra is we are all bio individual, right?
Yeah.
And that's why the hormone therapy is different for everybody and the supplements are different and everything. You may read one study, but does it apply to you? Who knows? You got to just do your own experiment,
Hmm.
hopefully safely, and figure out if it's right for you, and knowing that things may or may not work out for you, right?
Yeah.
So, all right, guys, I'm gonna have to let you go, but I want everyone to please follow the podcast, hit play, not pause. The book I love, Next Level: Your Guide to Kicking Ass, Feeling Great, and Crushing Goals Through Menopause and Beyond. That's the one you
I
wrote with
should.
Dr. Stacy Sims, right?
And I'm remiss to say that Roar, it's for the not necessarily the menopausal audience, but it's broad. That's coming out in January, the second revision of Roar
Oh, awesome!
that I also did with Dr. Stacy Sims. Yep.
Oh, fantastic! When did you say that's coming out? Second
January
edition.
9th.
January
Yep.
9th, the second edition. Awesome. Okay. Really good books. Highly, highly recommend those. Everybody can find you on your website, seleneyeager.contently.com. You're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I'll have links to all of that. Your Facebook group, I think everybody should join that. You know the rules and how to behave, right?
I make it clear every week. Yeah.
And you've got the Level Up membership. That's kind of fun.
Mhm.
You're in there a lot too. The
Yeah, no,
that's the monthly membership. Is there anything else
it's a
that
great group.
we should be sharing?
Boy, I don't think I've missed anything. It's early here, but I think that's it.
Awesome. Well, if there's anything else, you just give it to me and I'll put it in the show notes.
Okay.
And before I let you go, do you have any last words for a woman going through the menopause transition?
Oh boy. Again, like trust yourself. You're going through a transition. I think the biggest thing I've learned, and I've been thinking about this a lot, having spent time with continuous glucose monitor and my oil ring and like all these things, and looking at research, we still, I think, underestimate stress and the impact of stress on us and on our physiology and on our menopause, on everything. It's, stress is important. I liken it to the violin string. Without any stress, there's no music. With too much stress, the string snaps. You want that sweet spot of just enough stress where you can make music, but you're not snapping. And I think that is like a really, really important lesson for midlife menopause and beyond, because it really does impact your blood sugar and your blood pressure, all those things. It really, really does.
Yeah.
So you need to take care of yourself and have that restoration to balance out, when the stress gets out of line. That's just so important. Give yourself time to just air out your mind away from social media, away from all of the information. Like just let it breathe. Let your mind breathe outdoors. Lift weights. I can't get away from this conversation without telling women to lift. Muscle and strength make everything better. It is your metabolic 401k. And it's gonna be okay. Like you're moving into a really powerful time of life, and transitions are always painful and hard. But I think that there's so much joy and uh wow. I didn't think I would be sitting here looking forward to so much, but if you allow yourself to look forward instead of over your shoulder, like there's just so much possibility yet. You know, like let
You're
yourself feel
yeah.
it.
Oh, you're so good at words. I can tell you're a professional. Thank you so much, Selene. I love it. You're such an inspiration, and I hope to have you on many, many more times.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate you too. I enjoy the work you're doing.